Hello and welcome to Conservative Roundtable. I am Marianne Collins-King, your host for this evening's event. At this point in time, we want to say Happy National Women's Day. It's an extraordinary day for our nation based on the extraordinary people and women in our country. These women include mothers, sisters, daughters, aunts, mentors, leaders, CEOs, elected officials, the list goes on. And each one of these women in our country have individually and collectively contributed to create this country to become great. And one of those very great women that we honor today at Conservative Roundtable is Mrs. Nancy Reagan. Mrs. Nancy Reagan, she's one of those extraordinary women of our nation. She is the iconic and idealistic First Lady. She, at the age of 94, has passed away this last weekend. And here at Conservative Roundtable, we want to express our sincere condolences to the Reagan family. We want to express our hope for her in heaven as far as being embraced by our Lord. And she's with Ronnie. They're together again, the quintessential couple of the United States. So with her elegance, her grace, and her joy of being an American citizen, we greatly appreciate her, and we greatly appreciate the Reagan family. Moving on to our show this evening, we have some pretty extraordinary guests. Our first guest is Phillip Wyman. He is a candidate running for the United States Senate. Our second guest is Nicholas Sinclair. He is the executive director of American Principles Institutes. And our third guest is Sam Paredes. He is the owner of Gun Owners of California. We're going to go off to a break now. Stay tuned for Conservative Roundtable.
My qualifications for President of the United States are rather narrow. Is he or she godly? Does he or she love us? Can he or she do the job? And finally, would they kill a duck and put him in a pot and make him a good duck gumbo? I've looked at the candidates. Ted Cruz is my man. He fits the bill. He's godly. He loves us. He's the man for the job, and he will go duck hunting, because today we're going. Ted Cruz is my man. I'm voting for him.
Cruz, the reason we're going to vote for you, all of us, is because you're one of us, my man. That's why we're voting for you. It's now or never.
My qualifications for President of the United States are rather narrow. Is he or she godly? Does he or she love us? Can he or she do the job? And finally, would they kill a duck and put him in a pot and make him a good duck gumbo? I've looked at the candidates. Ted Cruz is my man. He fits the bill. He's godly. He loves us. He's the man for the job, and he will go duck hunting, because today we're going. Ted Cruz is my man. I'm voting for him.
Cruz, the reason we're going to vote for you, all of us, is because you're one of us, my man. That's why we're voting for you. It's now or never.
I mean, hey, I lived in New York City and Manhattan all my life, okay? So, you know, my views are a little bit different than if I lived in Iowa.
They are different, like on abortion.
Would President Trump ban partial birth abortion?
Well, look, I am pro-choice in every respect.
And what does Trump think about Iowa?
How stupid are the people of Iowa?
Donald Trump, New York values, not ours.
You know, my views are a little bit different than if I lived in Iowa.
I'm Ted Cruz, and I approve this message.
I mean, hey, I lived in New York City and Manhattan all my life, okay? So, you know, my views are a little bit different than if I lived in Iowa.
They are different, like on abortion.
Would President Trump ban partial birth abortion?
Well, look, I am pro-choice in every respect.
And what does Trump think about Iowa?
How stupid are the people of Iowa?
Donald Trump, New York values, not ours.
You know, my views are a little bit different than if I lived in Iowa.
I'm Ted Cruz, and I approve this message.
My qualifications for President of the United States are rather narrow. Is he or she godly? Does he or she love us? Can he or she do the job? And finally, would they kill a duck and put him in a pot and make him a good duck gumbo? I've looked at the candidates. Ted Cruz is my man. He fits the bill. He's godly. He loves us. He's the man for the job, and he will go duck hunting, because today we're going. Ted Cruz is my man. I'm voting for him.
Cruz, the reason we're going to vote for you, all of us, is because you're one of us, my man. That's why we're voting for you. It's now or never.
My qualifications for President of the United States are rather narrow. Is he or she godly? Does he or she love us? Can he or she do the job? And finally, would they kill a duck and put him in a pot and make him a good duck gumbo? I've looked at the candidates. Ted Cruz is my man. He fits the bill. He's godly. He loves us. He's the man for the job, and he will go duck hunting, because today we're going. Ted Cruz is my man. I'm voting for him.
Cruz, the reason we're going to vote for you, all of us, is because you're one of us, my man. That's why we're voting for you. It's now or never.
I mean, hey, I lived in New York City and Manhattan all my life, okay? So, you know, my views are a little bit different than if I lived in Iowa.
They are different, like on abortion.
Would President Trump ban partial birth abortion?
Well, look, I am pro-choice in every respect.
And what does Trump think about Iowa?
How stupid are the people of Iowa?
Donald Trump, New York values, not ours.
You know, my views are a little bit different than if I lived in Iowa.
I'm Ted Cruz, and I approve this message.
I mean, hey, I lived in New York City and Manhattan all my life, okay? So, you know, my views are a little bit different than if I lived in Iowa.
They are different, like on abortion.
Would President Trump ban partial birth abortion?
Well, look, I am pro-choice in every respect.
And what does Trump think about Iowa?
How stupid are the people of Iowa?
Donald Trump, New York values, not ours.
You know, my views are a little bit different than if I lived in Iowa.
I'm Ted Cruz, and I approve this message.
Welcome back to Conservative Roundtable. I'm Marianne Collins-King, your host, and this evening we are honored to have Phillip Wyman. He is running
by Phil.
Yes,
Phil works.
yes, Phil, and he is running for United States Senate. So congratulations on that race. And he is running against Barbara Boxer. So he is our conservative ticket for this upcoming race.
I would make one amendment. It is the Boxer seat, but she's basically retiring.
Yes.
So I will be running against the same person I did very well against in the 2014 for Attorney General. We did beautifully here in the Valley. But basically it's open. So it's Kamala Harris and it is Congresswoman Sanchez and then several other Republicans. I like to think that I am the grown-up and the solid conservative that can bring a U.S. Senate representative that's a Lincoln Republican to work with the Senate to meet a lot of key concerns. And I'm real glad to be with you this evening to talk about that.
Wonderful. So just to start out, because we have some viewers who perhaps may not know who you are, know your background and that type of thing, would you share some information about what led you on your path in politics?
Excellent. And that's where it's supposed to be?
Yes.
Okay. Actually, I am running as an Abraham Lincoln Republican, and I say that because our family and my grandmother shared with me, and I found out that Her grandfather, my great-great, planted the Presbyterian Church in Springfield and elsewhere after the War of 1812. I mean, it's so long ago.
Yes.
But he very much believed that slavery was wrong. He came and he joined with Black Hawk and established Springfield, and in the process, for almost 30 years, helped raise a young man who he first knew that was interested in surveying and well, it was Abraham Lincoln. And he helped raise Abraham Lincoln, having planted the Presbyterian Church there. The church that he planted in 1821 is the church that the Lincolns attended, and I have found so many wonderful stories about his commitment to liberty, his commitment to the Constitution, and what he called a return to the fountain, which is the Declaration of Independence. So our family, as my grandmother said, before we were Republicans, we were Whigs. But this last couple of years, I have been working very hard, reaching out to communities of color, working with Hispanics. I'm actually the first Republican who represented much of Kern County, a lot of the ag area. I was the senator here, defeated Mr. Costa, and then because of fraud, sadly, we narrowly lost, but those are some issues I am definitely wanting to talk about.
Right.
But I represented you in the State Assembly and the Senate, 3 strikes, and actually carried before the United States Supreme Court. I am an attorney, a member of the United States Supreme Court Bar, and I defended with Governor George Duke Machen Prop 13. So I'm a Prop 13 baby and also a Vietnam.
I remember Prop 13.
I'm a Prop 13 baby and a Vietnam era veteran.
Good. Yes, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And you
Thank
were
you.
in the Air Force, is that correct?
I was.
And how many years did you serve?
I served about 3 years, and in fact, I was in law school, finishing law school, and then I enlisted, and had an opportunity to deliver paychecks to most of the fleet and our warriors that were fighting for liberty in Southeast Asia. And I still have a focused concern about international relations. I went after the Gulf War in 91, because I served until 2002 in the Assembly, and I actually went to Israel. I went to occupied, or what was occupied, Syria. I met Yitzhak Rabin, the hero of the 67 war. I've been to the holy sites. I've been to an incredible remembrance, in Jerusalem of the Holocaust, and it has taught me.
Thank you for
so many
visiting my ancestors.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's been an opportunity of learning for me to find, as I did working with the Presidential Library, that in fact my great-grandfather and his son was actually the chairman for Lincoln when he was running for the U.S. Senate, and in the process was running against Stephen Douglas. And I might say in the process of reenacting the speech that he gave, which was remarkable, and I did that as also that same year I was a delegate for Mr. McCain. But I guess the bottom line is that Abraham Lincoln really knew what needed to be done, but his faith process really, as I learned more and more about it and read more about it, was really my great-great-grandfather who just opened up and said, "Young man, how can I help you?" Over a 30-year period, the bed that Abraham Lincoln lived and used when he visited our house is in our home in Tehachapi, California. So that Lincoln narrative has really allowed me to reach out to a lot of the new emerged majority in California. I think that's awesome.
It's a wonderful legacy, absolutely.
Oh, well, I think the fact we have so many wonderful Hispanic people that have been working so much in the fields, and particularly when I was the senator here, I was so concerned about the efforts by the Clinton administration, and here we have another Clinton coming. I actually have come upon some quotes that I was making and making with others that if we weren't careful and we took the water from the San Joaquin River and said that we should somehow have salmon there, when in fact it was only up in the Sierras, when people were that ignorant or that ideological that they thought that saving a critter or saving a fish that couldn't live in the heat here anyway was better than caring for the feeding of our state and
Human beings.
yeah, well, especially we had, and we have hundreds of thousands of largely Hispanic people who do a wonderful job and have been so involved in making agriculture successful. And at that time, in 1994, when the pushback was so complete, I actually predicted, I said, Mr. President Clinton, if you're not careful, in 20 years, if we have a drought and if there's global warming, our entire state, our nation could be at risk. So I hate to say I told you so, but I have that background and I'm a positive person. And in maybe a moment I can share with you a proposal that I've identified for bringing water from outside of California into the West and providing an opportunity to have perhaps double or triple by 2090, when we should have 85 to 90 million people here in this state instead of 42 million. How do we feed them? How do we feed the world? My background, I think, as an ag econ minor, has taught me that we can do that. And as I think about it, it touches my heart to some extent that I see some opportunities that others have not. But in the Senate, we need to be protecting our food, our fiber, our jobs. So many things are going amiss. And I think we need at least one Republican who's not incredibly partisan but wants to do the right thing, representing more people in California and more jobs, more income is coming to this state than all but 6 nations in the world. So we need somebody that understands these issues. I bring that to the table,
right.
and
that's along the lines of economic development. And I probably have 30 questions based on everything you have just mentioned and shared with our viewers. But in the terms of time and ensuring that we're able to listen to what you have to share with our viewers, you authored 3 Strikes and You're Out. Would you like to share with us what that is about?
Yes, and 3 Strikes was a very important piece of legislation that dealt with crime and punishment. I got into all of the interest of politics, particularly when a member of our family life was brutally taken, and when I was first elected as a Prop 13 baby, I also was very concerned about law and order. And at the time that I was running, Mr. Manson would have been subject to the death penalty, as would our family member, the person that perpetrated that, be subject to that. That didn't happen. So the first thing I did when I was elected to the legislature was to work with Governor Deukmejian, and I carried the Death Penalty Restoration Act, and that was very effective. In fact, in the fall of this year, there's already 3 governors and the district attorneys of the state, including our DA here from right here in the valley with Ms. Smitkamp.
Yes,
and
Lisa.
Dealing with Lisa and others, it will be a moderation of the bill that I carried for Governor Deukmejian. And so as we go into the fall, I think it's important, and I think it's almost godly, that to the extent we will be looking to be sure that a reinvigorated, moderated, amended death penalty, which is now geriatric, it's doing nothing because it was changed so much by the courts, that the District Attorneys Association, headed by Mike Ramos, who is from San Bernardino County, where 14 of our wonderful San Bernardino people were murdered. It's timely, and I will be speaking of that along with others in the state, but as the person who co-authored and worked to establish and get the death penalty back, as to how we need to change it, how we need to make it work better. It, along with 3 Strikes, has done some remarkable things. I'm so honored to have worked closely with Mike Reynolds. We had a horrible measure that was on the ballot, promoted and identified by Kamala Harris, the person I am basically running against,
Yes.
as saying it's not going to do any harm. It was an initiative 47. It did horrific harm. I have spoken to so many people. I talked to a person that I knew that was in bail bonding. He said, we used to have 7 people. Now we have just me half-time. And I said, what does that mean? It means that the criminals are at large. 3 strikes, as Mike has laid it out, was probably as successful as any entity in saving lives. And what are we talking about saving lives? We're talking about literally almost 4,000 Californians every 4 years that are with us. And over the 12 years, you're talking about in excess of 10,000 people unknown to any of us who are alive, unlike Himber and our family. And so I feel like that has to be focused on. 3 strikes is tough, but to the extent that it saved that many lives, and to the extent that in California we've seen a reduction of the penalties that aren't found elsewhere in the state, we simply need to be sure that 3 strikes is initiated, and that 47 that did so much damage is rectified, so that we're protecting our own.
Right, exactly. So in terms of 3 strikes, which deals with public safety primarily,
Exactly.
law and order, there are other issues, of course, that are important to the state and nationwide, such as the economy, pro-family, transportation. That's a huge deal right now in California, specifically in regard to high-speed rail, where the judge had said
Absolutely.
A-OK to $64 billion. That is a new judgment, so to speak, rather than us slowing it down. No pun intended about the train. So,
Shall I speak about a few of those things?
well, why don't we touch on that? And
Yeah.
for me, as a Californian and a voter,
Go this way. Yeah.
I would like to know what is your vision for our state as a U.S. Senator, and how do you plan to execute that particular vision to improve these areas in California that need much improvement?
Well, you make some very important points, and much of what matured me as a legislator, as a state senator, was dealing with the issues that related to transportation. I had earlier in my legislative career carried an ACA that basically dedicated, now, again, sometimes these items are good at a certain point, but when a liberal majority is there, they begin to tearing it apart. But the notion was that sales tax on motor vehicle fuel should go to highways. Also, we should not have a prevailing wage where the highest of all the union jobs is what a person is paid working either to build schools or to build highways. I'm not objecting to people having a good wage, but if it is so much above what is still a good wage, do we want to see portable school buildings, or do we want to see permanent? Do we want to have more lanes so the people of Orange, San Bernardino, Los Angeles, Hispanic families you could imagine that have many members of their family that are going to work, they're working very hard, they're not making as much as a lot of other people. And as I've talked to the Hispanic community, I said, I'm sure there's nothing that makes you more angry, or at least unhappy, is when you're stuck in the traffic in Orange, San Bernardino, in Orange, LA, and in San Diego County. And it is no thanks to Kamala Harris that an ongoing proposal, because our proposal that I put together, there could be a smallest amount for transit, but the rest was to get our citizens from point A to point B. And that means also to stop pollution. Well, if a person is stuck between San Diego and Los Angeles in the middle of Orange, and you're there for 4 hours and everything is belching, I don't think that's environmentally sane. And for Kamala Harris to have joined with a radical group in San Diego complaining that they wanted, maybe like half for transit when it is not used that much, and there's so much need to widen the freeways. That to me is reason enough, in addition to her unwillingness to enforce the rule of law and to fight sanctuaryism that killed Kate Steinle and others, an absolutely innocent person. So I'm crossing a lot of issues, but I would say to begin with, I warned the President of the United States that if his Secretary of the Interior went forward and did what he did with the San Joaquin River and did with endangered species, and I've written 2 law review articles about that, in 20 years, and I mean, we are 20 years later from when, through fraud, and I'd like to talk to that issue a little bit as well, where there was massive fraud before Bill Jones came in. I remember these things, and I would say the number one issue with drought, jobs, of course, I have been a strong supporter before I got into the legislature, and I must share this with you. I found a beautiful letter sent to me when I lost in 1976 for the State Assembly from Ronald Reagan. It was a beautiful letter to me, and he says, you tried very well. You came very close, but sometimes, it said in this beautiful letter that he sent me, we have to try a little bit harder. I just want to, as I'm saying that, remind us all that in this week, at least as we are speaking today, Nancy Reagan passed away and went home forever with God, our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and her beloved Ron. They were among the kindest people I've ever known. I first met Ronald Reagan when I was 12 years old, and he was at an event in Sacramento, and I can push forward 25 years when I became the caucus policy director and represented the Antelope Valley and much of the high desert, and the President of the United States, not the man and the kid in Sacramento. I was there as a leader of our state, and there President Ronald Reagan was, having just defeated his opponent in the second wave when the B-1 came out. And to this veteran, this Vietnam vet, let me tell you, nothing caused me to wet my eyes more than to see this wonderful man who wrote this letter to me say, try a little bit harder. I did the next time. And when he wrote that, he had just lost the nomination to President Ford 2 months before. So when he wrote me, he had no idea that he would even ever be president.
Right. So Phil, what a major encouragement that was for you.
Yeah, these are these godly things that have happened in my in my life. Seeing my cousin murdered, and yet while I was here representing the Valley, I wrote a bill and co-authored it by the name of Son of Sam. What Son of Sam said, and it's a law and order bill, it was saying that if you do anything based upon your crime that raises dollars for you, that money will go not to you, but it will go to a victims fund for people such as Mike Reynolds and others.
Excellent.
And let me tell you, that was passed to a certain individual who is still residing in Corcoran by the name of Manson. And as a consequence of that, and my comments on that, for which I was very proud, and I meant every word that I said, I was called in by the leadership of the cops in the Senate and others and said, Senator, we need to talk to you. And the bottom line was that a threat to have me assassinated was put forward by Mr. Manson. Now, God is good, and I'm here, and he's still in Corcoran, but that taught me more than anything else that we need to have criminals in institutions where they can't hurt other people.
Right.
And this bill that we're working on, cleaning up the death penalty, isn't designed to have a lot of death penalty executions. It's just saying that if, for instance, a person has done the very worst, this person is in there for life, and suppose that person kills 2 correctional officers, 2 of our CCPOA people. That's crime without punishment. So it should be rare, but we should never allow somebody to do that. So to say that I'm law and order, that goes well beyond. It's the rule of law. It's the difference between Iran and the United States of America, the difference between Greece and Nazi Germany. I mean, we're either with it or against it.
Exactly.
And this year, with so many things happening, both parties being disliked for good reasons for so many times, I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, running for office.
Very
and
good.
if that means I bring more Hispanics and more people of color in and that I lose, fine. But I'm beginning to feel that as people understand who I am, where I'm coming from, and I want to talk about this water issue as well.
I would love to talk about the water issue, but with that being said, our time is up for this evening, so we will have to have you come back
Well,
for
that's
another
a good reason
segment.
to do it again.
Yes, so
Yeah.
thank you again, Phil. Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
your time and you coming out here to
My
Conservative
pleasure.
Roundtable, and we are going to go to a break. Thank
Okay.
you.
My qualifications for President of the United States are rather narrow. Is he or she godly? Does he or she love us? Can he or she do the job? And finally, would they kill a duck and put him in a pot and make him a good duck gumbo? I've looked at the candidates. Ted Cruz is my man. He fits the bill. He's godly. He loves us. He's the man for the job, and he will go duck hunting, because today we're going. Ted Cruz is my man. I'm voting for him.
Cruz, the reason we're going to vote for you, all of us, is because you're one of us, my man. That's why we're voting for you. It's now or never.
My qualifications for President of the United States are rather narrow. Is he or she godly? Does he or she love us? Can he or she do the job? And finally, would they kill a duck and put him in a pot and make him a good duck gumbo? I've looked at the candidates. Ted Cruz is my man. He fits the bill. He's godly. He loves us. He's the man for the job, and he will go duck hunting, because today we're going. Ted Cruz is my man. I'm voting for him.
Cruz, the reason we're going to vote for you, all of us, is because you're one of us, my man. That's why we're voting for you. It's now or never.
Hello, welcome back to Conservative Roundtable. I'm Marianne Collins-King, your host, and this evening we are honored to have Nicholas Sinclair. He is the Executive Director of American Principles Institute. Hi, Nicholas. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I took a quick peek at your website, and I found it fascinating.
And
But
probably exhausting with all the information we have, right?
Yes, well, exhausting, but in a very good way.
Right, yes.
But with that being said, I would like to know, and I'm sure our viewers would as well, would like to know a little bit more about you.
Okay.
Yes, and then what brought you amongst your journey to work with API?
Okay, well, I'm from Fresno, and I was working with nonprofits after graduating from Cal Poly up in Sacramento.
And what was your major?
Political science and
Of
communication
course.
studies.
Perfect.
And I moved back to Fresno because I met the chairman of the organization, who's actually the founder. His
Okay.
name is Preston Little.
Okay.
We had a brief meeting. Actually, it wasn't brief. It was about 5 hours where we were talking about the vision.
When you're passionate about
Yeah,
something, it's usually more than a few hours.
It was supposed to be an interview and it ended up being this great discussion of
Yes.
what the organization would be.
Excellent.
Because at the time it was known as the Sunbird Conservatives,
Yes.
which was a club on the campus of Fresno Pacific University.
okay.
And it turned into this 501c3 nonprofit organization
Mm-hmm.
called the American Principles Institute last year at our conference.
Oh, great. Okay. Now, let's talk more about what the organization is.
Well, we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization.
That's good to know.
Yes.
So you take donations.
We do, and they are tax deductible.
Very good.
We are designed to educate Californians on conservative principles,
Okay.
on the American principles. And that's everything from traditional values to limited government, free enterprise, personal responsibility, strong national defense. We have a wide breadth of what those principles are, and our programs are designed to instruct and inspire people on what those principles
I so appreciate that because many times the Central Valley is somewhat overlooked as far as more specifics in regard to issues that are very important to us.
Which is so surprising because there's such a huge conservative presence here
There
in Fresno.
absolutely
and in
is.
Central Valley.
I mean, in terms of agriculture, you know, I was born in Southern California, very familiar with it, raised in Northern California, have been around San Francisco, San Jose area for most of my life, and have been in the Central Valley for almost 9 years. So within this 9-year period, I am so appreciating what agriculture is, what it's about, the work ethic of the farmers that I've met through my years of living here, and then realizing that there's some folks up north and down south that really don't appreciate what we do, what the farmers do here. So with that being said, my concern, of course, and as well as everyone here in the room, is the water issue.
I think that's everyone's concern.
I mean,
it's so unfortunate.
What
like
are
you
your
said.
thoughts on that as far as working on the website and information and resources that you have available for us to read?
Well, actually, what's funny is we spoke this morning with a potential speaker, Debbie Boulanger, who's a potential speaker for the summit that we're having.
Oh, great.
So the summit is one of the big programs that we have every year.
Okay.
It is a 3-day conference here in Fresno that has multiple panels, live entertainment, policy discussions, and one of those panels is going to cover water. We have Lawrence McQuillan, who's with the Independent Institute. He's actually going to cover a topic on water.
Okay.
So if you're interested in learning more about the issue of water in a more policy forward rather than opinion, if you're interested in
Public
actual
policy
exactly.
and how it works with regulation, ordinances, and that type of thing, because there are so many.
Yeah.
And I think what's important is for our citizens and our community to become more aware of that, because it's very easy to say, why don't they give us more water? This makes no sense.
Right.
And then they tend to project that upon either the legislator or the congressperson in that area because it's their fault.
Right.
But it comes down to there's so many more details that we are, we haven't researched, nor do we know where to research. So your organization and your website is very helpful for those resources for us to become more educated.
Right. Well, that's the thing is we're an educational organization.
Perfect.
So
Yes.
while we're informing people about these principles, limited government, strong national defense, water,
Right.
we're bringing in the experts. I mean, we have in-house people, but we're bringing in experts from around the nation, not just around the state, not just around the Central Valley, but around the nation, coming to Fresno to talk about this.
Okay. And when is this event?
It's May 19th through the 21st,
Okay.
and it's going to be held at the Fresno Convention Center.
All right.
And it's the 2016 API Liberty Summit. And if you want to learn more about it, you can go to www.apilibertysummit.com.
And I think we have that website, don't we, Bill, on the band? Excellent. All right. So our viewers can click on that and take a peek at that upcoming event. And is there a cost for this event?
There is.
Okay.
It is $100 for one day, but for 2 days, it's going to be $125.
It's all about return on investment, if you ask me. Education itself, $100 to $200 for something like that. So people are more aware about the water issue, which is so significant in our area.
If you actually want to attend both days, for people who are watching the show tonight, you can go onto our website. And when you go into registration, you can go to the registration platform, and on the coupon code, you type in CVTV for Central Valley Talk. I'm sorry, CVTL for Central Valley Talk Live.
Excellent.
And you can get the 2-day registration for 1-day price.
Very good. So there are perks to watching our show. Thank you, viewers. So now, we've spoke a little bit about water, and we know there's all these amazing resources. There are other major issues that the website does touch upon. Business, immigration is a huge one. agriculture, of course, law and order, public safety, transportation. We have a few minutes to discuss.
Yeah.
So why don't you choose maybe two of those major issues and share with me what you know about what's going on in the Valley and what people should probably learn to educate themselves to be, really to be more educated about these issues that are pending.
Yeah, of course. I'm going to tie it back.
It's like, where do we begin?
I'm going to tie it back to the summit.
Okay.
I mean, I can give you my opinion all day on these issues.
I am completely with you on that. Yes.
But we do have experts from around the nation who are actually coming to Fresno to actually talk about these issues. And we actually have a lot of local officials as well. If we want to talk about national security, for instance,
yes,
we have an intelligence panel with the chairman of the Intelligence Committee for the House, who is Devin Nunes.
Excellent. Okay.
And we also have Stephen Hayes, who's a writer for the Weekly Standard.
Okay.
And Thomas Jocelyn, who's I believe he's the executive director of the Defense of Democracies. So they're coming together to create a panel at our event. So if you're interested in intelligence, they give a great interview with KMJ, who's actually a presenting sponsor of our event, about the state of intelligence.
Like foreign affairs and that kind of
thing.
Now, I did not see anywhere on the website, or perhaps I didn't spend as much time, which I will now, in reference to crime in our area.
Right.
Gangs, human trafficking. There is a lot going on
especially
that so many people in Fresno are unaware of. Last week, actually 2 weeks ago, we had the opportunity to speak with Andrea Shabaglian, and she is the president and CEO of Made for Them, which is an organization that creates an amazing retail clothing line. The revenue of that will go towards the other prong approach of the organization, which is assisting individuals who are rehabilitating from human trafficking. And the reality is it's so rampant in parts of Fresno. And I do know many of the detectives that work within that realm. Lisa Smitkamp, our DA, is pretty amazing working with that as well. So
she's doing a great job as far as it goes. I had the honor of listening to her discussion regarding the recent proposition that let a lot of the criminals out of the jail system.
Yes.
And how people didn't understand when they were passing that proposition that these are repeat offenders. They're going to be, they're the ones, whether they're going for drugs, they're coming back and they're stealing things out of cars, they're going to the police station and are being let right back out into the streets.
And you know what it comes down to, in my opinion, is rehabilitation and figuring out what type of rehabilitation is needed, not for the big group in those 5 cells. It's an individual situation. Because in our country, our founding fathers founded the country upon Judeo-Christian belief system, which means we respect all faiths, all religions. But with that being said, there's a certain core that is so unique about that to really be respectful of individuals. And many times these individuals that are in the cells, in the gangs, doing what they're doing, they don't even respect themselves because they never had that in their own home.
They don't, and it's partially respect, it's partially personal responsibility.
Yes,
and it's completely lacking. I feel like within our society.
Yeah. So, and I'm a foundational person. Like our country, based upon that, what has worked, what are the bricks and mortar, and then to see that fall away, what do we do to get back on track? So that's why working with these situations with crime in our city, what do we do? What's the best approach?
If you're interested in crime, and if you're interested in crime in the Fresno City area, we have a very big supporter of our organization who's Brandon Shoemaker, who's actually a candidate for Assembly back in 2010. He's coordinating right now a panel within our event for local law enforcement. So we have I don't want to name names because it's not completely done yet, but we have some very high-level officials within the Fresno area who are very interested in coming to our summit.
And my point about talking about crime, human trafficking, gang violence, and domestic violence primarily is any type of violence on any level really affects economic development.
It does.
I cannot emphasize that enough, and so many people don't think of it as as things that graft together. And that's the reality. And that's what's slowing it down, our economic development in many of the districts in Fresno, based on my observation and the statistics.
Well, I mean, yeah, you look at downtown.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
Yes.
I loved Warner's Theater. I love
Absolutely.
We had
Architecture.
we had an event last year that was at Wilson Theater, which is a Cornerstone Church.
Yes.
You see what Granville Homes is doing with
Yes.
the lead,
Darius
all the
and the
Darius
Yosemite family.
they're doing a great job downtown.
Yes, they are.
Revitalizing it. But there are still, I feel like because of the crime issue, there's still people just very hesitant about moving into downtown.
And I understand that.
And that affects businesses, that affects morale within the city, and like I said, we have people who are going to be discussing this in the summit.
Excellent.
We have a great slate. I think primarily we actually overdid it in a way in terms of economic policy speakers. So if you want to go to the website again,
I will.
I completely implore you to do that because we have some great economic speakers.
All right, so Nicholas, we're going to wrap this up in 20 seconds.
Okay.
What are the last few things you would like to share with our viewers about API and the upcoming event?
API is a fantastic organization. It's a conservative, nonprofit think tank that's rising here in Fresno. We are having an amazing event, the 2016 API Liberty Summit with Dinesh D'Souza, Hugh Hewitt, Matt Kibbe, Thomas Jocelyn. We have a bunch of great speakers, Chris Tonto-Pronto from Benghazi, the Politichicks. If you're interested, go to www.apilibertysummit.com.
Very good. Nicholas, thank you again.
Thank you so much. I appreciate
pleasure.
Everything.
Take care and God bless.
God bless.
My qualifications for President of the United States are rather narrow. Is he or she godly? Does he or she love us? Can he or she do the job? And finally, would they kill a duck and put him in a pot and make him a good duck gumbo? I've looked at the candidates. Ted Cruz is my man. He fits the bill. He's godly. He loves us. He's the man for the job, and he will go duck hunting because today we're going. Ted Cruz is my man. I'm voting for him.
Cruz, the reason we're going to vote for you, all of us, is because you're one of us, my man. That's why we're voting for you. It's now or never.
My qualifications for President of the United States are rather narrow. Is he or she godly? Does he or she love us? Can he or she do the job? And finally, would they kill a duck and put him in a pot and make him a good duck gumbo? I've looked at the candidates. Ted Cruz is my man. He fits the bill. He's godly. He loves us. He's the man for the job, and he will go duck hunting because today we're going. Ted Cruz is my man. I'm voting for him.
Cruz, the reason we're going to vote for you, all of us, is because you're one of us, my man. That's why we're voting for you. It's now or never.
Hello, welcome back to Conservative Roundtable. I'm Marianne Collins-King, your host for this evening's event. We are fortunate enough to have Phil Wyman back with us. He has just a plethora of information and education for us, and there's a few key issues that we would like to discuss. One being going back to water, second being land with agriculture, and thirdly, he's going to talk about fraud. So why don't we start with really the big one that we talk about all the time here in the Valley, the water situation.
You know, there is nothing more important for any civilization, whether you go to South America and wonder why a great civilization failed, or the Mayans. That's everything, and it applies to our existing civilization, and particularly California. I studied water law, and to the extent that I'm a good attorney, I have issues on law and order, but especially my background in agricultural economics and working with my late father that got me even interested in politics and water had to do with an adjudication in the Tehachapi Valley where in drought times in that little area there's still enough water. Mm-hmm. What did they do that others didn't do? Mm-hmm. I'd like to just give a little bit of a background on what I have put together, and as the next junior senator, United States Senator from California, if that's what the voters would provide for me. Mm-hmm. I think one of the reasons they might want to have me there is because as a representative of the Valley, I've shared with you and others that the wrong things were happening. We were not looking to the future of agriculture here in the Great Valley, where we feed the state, the county, and the world. It's part of our trade. What I noticed as I was the state senator for this district in the Central Valley, it seemed perfect with my background in ag and in the law. 20 years later, I think I've mentioned that I said at the time to others, if the Endangered Species Act is designed to put critters and animals and flora and fauna ahead of human beings as opposed to doing what is necessary but looking at our independence as a nation, then water and the needs of water in this state of ours is absolutely essential. The proposal that I have been looking very closely at was the importation of water. A lot of people have talked about a lot of different areas, and we don't have the time really to go in those, but yes, sometimes if you have desalinization, that works for a while if you're right on the edge of the ocean. But what I've put together is based upon what a lot of folks in the past have been looking at, and that is the importation of water. And the particular proposal that I think could make great sense is something that engineers of both parties back 50, 60, maybe even 80 years ago were smart enough that they knew a civilization had to take care of these things. You just can't have us now at 42 million people and going to 90 million people by the end of this century. How are we going to feed these people? What I have been looking very closely at, I did research in Washington, D.C. I also talked to key partners that have been looking at this in the past, and it basically calls for bringing water from at least the proposal that I think is of real relevance to review, and I know there's going to be a gathering of folks here in Fresno looking at these things. I'm very upbeat about this proposal of bringing water from the northernmost portions of the Mississippi and bringing it across the western states. Not something like the Owens Valley issue where DWP took advantage of the Owens Valley. And so, as I said, the first thing, we'd never want to call this the California Canal.
Right.
This would be something where every state in the West, and as a candidate running for U.S. Senate, I actually met about a third of the senators in D.C. Mm-hmm. Most of the people who run, I don't know that they've even been back there, but I'm a collegial person. I like to work with people, and I was talking to members that represented different Western states. How might everybody benefit? And it's in the Constitution, and we love the value and the intelligence that put the Constitution together to allow compacts to come together and meet needs. We need more water. We need more water because we don't have enough storage. We need to initially just have additional storage, raise a Shasta Dam, proposals that I understand. But if we're looking at feeding this state with 90 million people instead of 45 million people, even if we did all of that which is suggested without the interference of extreme environmental alternatives that push most of it out into the ocean or waste it. We need to do something else. The proposal that's been brought together by some of these very wise engineers of the past, but has been given some, shall we say, meat on the bone, is to bring water from the Mississippi at the northernmost portion, to bring it into the high desert of California, where you either you can go to areas like Palm Springs, you see lots of flora and fauna, and then you'll see all sand. I mean, with water, everything can change. The proposal that we're looking at and wanting, and I would like as a senator to propose and to look forward to, would be to bring huge amounts of water into the high desert of the California, would be to bring it to a low portion like the Salton Sea. Geologists are telling us that both the northern and the southern portion of the fault that we deal with here does require more weight. So bringing salt water and ultimately it would be fresh water, and having that available for agriculture, shall we say, in the areas of San Bernardino County and others, that water would then be available with a donut around it that would perhaps be twice as much as all the ag in the Central Valley. So it's looking to, for instance, my grandbabies, I got 7 of them, when they're going for Social Security, 65 years, what might be available to feed them and to feed our state and our nation. And I think that will be a major focus that I want to see if we can make that work. Then we can afford to have 100 million people. But right now, that's not working.
So we have about 40 seconds to wrap that up, and we didn't really get to agriculture or fraud, which will be for another show, in about 20 seconds.
Okay, let me just conclude by saying that to the extent that we need money to raise these existing venues that hold water, to the extent that it's warmer, it's warmer. We're not going to, I don't argue about that. We need to take the money that would be a total waste on a train, especially when technology allows that it may be done by the private sector, and put all of that into storage, Shasta, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and then look at this longer view as a new United States Senator, working with all of the other senators in the West.
Right. Well, Phil, thank you so very much again for these words of wisdom. It was such a pleasure for you to be here this evening. You will either be back, I'm sure, or we can Skype you in to talk about those other issues because they are very important.
Absolutely.
So thank you, everyone, for viewing Conservative Roundtable. Until next week, God bless.
The knife with a line.